Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our brand new channel, a brand new podcast slash YouTube slash a couple of things. Right?
Sure.
What we're going to do is we are going to try and add a little bit of value.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a joke for you.
Okay.
How many MBAs does it take to change a light bulb?
Too many.
Too many. I think it's going to be less than it would take to change the globe. So I think we're going to call our channel Changing Globes.
Changing Globes, sure.
Play on that word.
Okay.
And it's because we're in Africa. It's going to be about Africa. Changing Africa. So
Africa edition.
Africa edition.
Cool.
Absolutely. And I think the purpose, what we want to try and do is, we know a lot of people who've done MBAs.
Mm-hmm.
You've got an MBA. I've got an MBA. How do you know somebody's got an MBA?
They'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. So what we're going to try and do is see how would one change the globe. A theory that I've been talking about, and I think you subscribe to, is changing our infrastructure or increasing our wealth. So we think that this podcast is going to be about increasing wealth by investing in companies. So that's one of the things that you can do. And the companies are the very companies that make the products that you love. So we'll kind of do that. And why MPAs? Because most people will say, I don't know how to invest. I don't know what to invest in. So we'll try and do that. The stock market is a good shop for one to invest in companies. So we're going to put a bit of ground rules around the types of companies that we can talk to. So it must be a listed company, because what a listed company gives you and I is access to the annual report. And in the annual report is usually everything the company thinks about their future and what's happened kind of in the past. And so that way we can kind of give insight, and that's where we come in.
To try and kind of demystify
what you actually could know about a company just from public records.
Sure.
You don't need to know a guy.
Yeah.
You can know a guy, but insider trading, they won't help you, right?
No, for sure.
Yeah. So we're going to try and analyze these companies that are publicly available using the tools that we've learned over our courses. And I think the things that we want to try and cover when you watch this thing is, if you're investing, what should you know about a company? What in that publicly available information, what's usually there that you can look for, and what kind of signs? And a big disclaimer, we're not financial advisors.
No, definitely not.
This is not financial advice. This is just merely unpacking an annual report so people can understand more about the company and what that company thinks they'll be doing. Okay, we'd also love for the CEOs to come in and expand on their strategy a bit later on, but we're on episode 1. Not taking our calls.
Sure, not yet.
Not yet. Don't know what it is. I won't take it personally.
Maybe it's because you got an MBA.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? People who can talk but not do. Dangerous. So let's kick it off. I think today we settled on MTN. A lot of people are in the space of phone calls and data, and we could have picked any company, so we just picked MTN. There's no madness behind it. MTN.co.za is where you can find a lot of information about the company, but more importantly, on most publicly listed websites, there is a section called Investor Relations. You try and find your way to Investor Relations. And in Investor Relations, you can find the annual report, you can find the report, you can find the presentation, the group results.
Yeah, in fact, MTN's got pretty cool, lots of cool information. They even provide like a spreadsheet of all their numbers. If you wanted to crunch those, you could put them through a couple of tools and see trends and those kinds of things. So they really provide quite a lot of information.
Yeah. And this is why we also chose them.
Yeah.
They're good child ones.
Information for us to sink our teeth into.
Yeah. I saw, of the information that I looked at, I've got an annual report for 2020. And that means that the year that we're looking at is up till the 31st of December 2020. So they're already in their strategy this year. So you could use this podcast, listen to some stuff that we'll say, and you can dive in and see if you can see any of that strategy coming to light. Cool. We don't have sponsors, so if you can sponsor us. Shameless plug.
If you're a sponsor willing to sponsor, we are available.
Yeah, including MTN.
Sure.
Okay. So and later on we'll have guests in terms of the other MBAs, and we'll also do an intro in terms of who they are and what they do. For episode 1, we won't bother on our side, but somewhere along the line you'll find out a bit more about us other than having MBAs. But let's focus on MTN. I think let's spend the next 10 minutes just having a little bit of a chat about MTN and how they see themselves in these annual reports. So I'll always ask this question, and I'd like to ask you your thoughts. Why is MTN important to South Africa? Why is it important that this company exists at all?
It's a very esoteric question. I mean, communication is a critical component in every economy, in every society. We see research from the World Bank shows very clearly that when broadband and digital technologies are brought into an economy, it has a significant economic uplift to that economy as well.
Yeah.
And so MTN, being one of the major providers of those kinds of capabilities for South Africa, is obviously a significant player. I think another important, I think MTN for me is an example of a company that really takes advantage of our strategic capabilities as a country. And I feel like one of our main strategic capabilities as a country is our foreign relations footprint. Our diplomats, our diplomatic corps are among the best in the world. And we, South Africa, bottom of Africa, little country here, have the second largest diplomatic corps in the world.
Wow.
And MTN really leverages that. And so they've got a phenomenal global footprint.
Cool.
And because of that global footprint, they're quite a robust company. They've got so many markets and so many segments. I was watching the Afghanistan news now the other day and noticed that MTN is in Afghanistan.
Wow.
So MTN logo on the news and
so not just important to South Africa, but important to Afghan as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Afghan people.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sure.
According to their website, I love what they say. So we asked their annual report, and their annual report has it quite boldly at the beginning. They said they believe that everyone deserves the benefits of a modern life.
Okay.
That's quite cool. I thought
Yeah.
that's a nice way to see yourself
Yeah.
and to see what you bring to the party.
Yeah, and that of course extends their scope as well, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, they're going beyond mobile now. I mean, financial services is now a significant part of their business.
Yes.
I mean, like you can't say 13 billion rand is a small amount of money, you know. I mean, and that's their side hustle, you know?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and speaking of that, I think maybe let's talk a little bit about, for somebody who might be viewing this, how the layman on the street sees MTN in terms of what they sell, in terms of what they provide. So if you've never heard of MTN, I think the best way to sum them up in one really concise sentence is they sell airtime and they sell data. Just as a horrible summarization of kind of
and there's now this financial services thing as well.
Absolutely, and that's why
the mobile money bit as well.
Absolutely. So if a guy on the street just knows that they sell airtime and they sell data, I think maybe to add to that, I would say, and they do it in 21 countries. So it's not little airtime that they're selling, to your point about the diplomatic corps. But now back to your point being, now how do you tell the guy on the street that they do more than airtime and data? What does their annual report say? What are all the things that they do?
Yeah, no. But also maybe also to from that perspective, think about from a man in the street perspective, just your anecdotal experience of MTN on the street.
Yes.
And if you're considering MTN as a company that you want to invest in,
Yeah.
also just take your own personal experience about how many people you know uses MTN.
Yeah.
Do you think selling data and selling airtime is a business that's going to continue? It's a viable business in the future. It's ongoing. If you like those kinds of characteristics about a company, then that's the kind of company that you want to buy in if you can see its future.
Absolutely.
Every day, you know.
Is it a product you love?
Yeah, exactly. You know,
Yes.
and can you find people around you that love the product?
Indeed. I looked at and in the annual report they really try and talk about geographies. I don't personally like when companies talk about geographies as their products that they sell, because they don't sell countries. So open your report. And your revenue says South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. Is like, are you selling? You're selling humans? Three Nigerians, two South Africans.
Yeah, Africa's got a sensitive history about selling humans, right?
Exactly. So maybe if I was to advise, your revenue, you know, that's internal to you.
Sure.
It's internal to how you slice it up. If I'm picking up your annual report, I want to know, you're selling airtime, you're selling data. I know that. What else are you selling that I'm missing? And you kind of dive a little bit later on, and I see, you know, they've got what they call service revenue, which is the airtime. I saw handsets a little bit later on, so I put handsets into there.
Okay.
They sell data. And then they've got a new thing in fintech, which is their mobile money. And then they had a thing called digital. And again, I'm a guy on the street. I read it end to end, and I removed myself from everything I know about MTN, and I don't know what digital means. But they sell it. It's a business. 7% of their turnover
is digital.
Comes from digital.
Okay, maybe we must just unpack that a little bit, right? I mean, so we find that funny because you could argue MTN is nothing but a digital company.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Right.
So why would they have a product specialization segment that's just called digital when you could see the whole company as digital? And so what is this now thing that is digital that's 7% of their revenue?
Yes.
And is that a growing market for this?
Is that a growing market? If you're investing, what are you investing into? And so we find it a lot in a lot of the reports that we read. They become very internally focused. They build the way they have to produce products and services is they break themselves up. You're going to focus on Nigeria, you're going to focus on Ghana, and then in there they do a couple of more things. You're going to maintain our towers. You're going to and when they do all of that, when it comes back to the annual report, they forget that they're talking to everybody other than just people inside.
Sure.
And then they have words like digital, which another So I wrote, I'm unclear.
Yeah, we certainly need to find somebody that can explain to us
what that is,
what digital is in the context of a telecommunications company.
Absolutely. And then what I wanted to circle back on was mobile money, because you have a bit of insight as to the fact that this is their second time around on mobile money
in South Africa.
In South Africa. So in the annual report, they're quite proud that they've launched this new service called mobile money. I think they call it Momo.
Yes, Momo. Momo is the new service.
But I wanted to go. But again, so what happened the first time, and as an investor, can I believe it this time? Is it what's different?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good question. So practically the first time around, what they did was they partnered with a bank, because the assumption being that MTN is not a bank and they needed banking skills. They partnered with a bank, a South African bank in South Africa, and they kind of took that to market. A big challenge with that offering was the pricing of that offering, the mobile money pricing. They were charging and my suspicion is that the pricing was born from the fact that there was banking costs that needed to be covered, and there was telecommunication costs that needed to be covered.
Right.
And so when you're adding those things together,
But
cost plus, and you
yes.
put a little margin on it, then it became very expensive. And so it was a very bottom-up approach to delivering that service.
Right.
And so there was a little bit of initial adoption, but there wasn't much transactional revenue associated with that. Another challenge was also the segment of the market that they were going into.
Yes.
Was typically an unbanked segment of the market,
Right.
and then
you're coming with the more expensive product
and price sensitivity
than the
was
one
a
that they're
problem.
not even using.
100%,
at the first place.
100%.
And that makes it interesting. So now they're going in again. Their view is that everyone deserves access, benefits of a modern life, mobile money. So tell us about round 2. Because it seems to be the same segment.
Yes, it does seem to be the same segment, but a couple of things have changed.
Yeah.
Technology has evolved.
Okay.
Models like M-Pesa have proven themselves.
Yeah.
So M-Pesa is a mobile money product that came out of East Africa. In Kenya, it was developed,
Yes.
and it reached quite a big market and achieved quite a lot of success.
Yeah.
In that market, and that was the real first demonstration of a telecommunications company delivering a financial services capability at scale to a community.
Right. And that was not MTN, right?
No, that was not MTN, no.
Right, so this is Vodacom, I believe, or
yes, it was
Vodacom related?
It was Vodacom, definitely.
Okay.
And they had a very interesting model where they made use of agents who unsold the capability into the community, and was kind of like that anchor point for the community to interact with. Almost like a trusted advisor type of to be able to explain this digital capability, or a digital advisor, this mobile. So like if I'm moving from a physical currency thing and I'm moving to a digital currency thing, I do need some explanation, on what am I getting myself into, etc. And so those models were quite effective. M-Pesa itself did come to South Africa.
Yes, I was going to ask that.
Through Nedbank.
Okay.
So Nedbank brought it through into South Africa.
And how's that done?
And that failed as well.
Right. Am I seeing a pattern? Must I be hopeful?
So some people will say that it's our regulatory environment in South Africa, particularly around the financial transactions and how we manage that made it quite difficult.
Yeah.
Remember, we historically have a very strong financial services sector, very well-regulated financial services sector. Our Reserve Bank is one of only 3 Reserve Banks in the world that is privately owned.
Yes.
Our national payment system is digital and is one of the most advanced national payment systems in the world as well. And so very well-regulated space, very well implemented space in financial services.
But bringing about that problem then, which then we have that report in the country that says 80% of South Africans don't take part in this formal, very well-regulated economy. And then the question, I suppose, the Nedbanks and M-Pesa and all of these guys are trying to satisfy is how do we address?
Well, yeah, I mean, just so it's the banking system that they're not participating in.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So there's some World Bank data. World Bank keeps track of these kinds of things, financial inclusion kinds of things. And there's some World Bank data that shows that about 79% of South Africans will touch an ATM in a month.
Right.
And will extract, and it's typically salaries that's being extracted.
Yes.
But what is happening, and in South Africa's technical definition of our targets for the unbanked, and we 1% away. Right, in the technical definition.
Okay.
But the reality is people are just
pulling the money out,
and then they
never see them again.
Yeah, then you never see them again in a cash economy.
Right.
So there is 79% of our population that's doing that.
Yes.
Kind of thing. The same World Bank report also shows that about 15 to 17% are actually utilizing the banking infrastructure in the lower income and middle class sector.
Right. So 1 in 5, 1 in 6.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in that regulated space.
Right.
Now mobile money comes in as an opportunity in that space.
Yeah.
Because e-wallets have now evolved.
Yeah.
And e-wallets can operate at much lower cost base. Right?
Okay.
And so e-wallets can now be offered to that community at a significantly lower price.
So the regulation is now changed, you're saying? Are you saying?
No, the regulation is still the same,
Okay.
but the technology has improved.
Okay.
And the business models around it has improved.
Okay.
So the learnings from M-Pesa is now filtering through to all the other countries and all the other organizations.
Okay.
And so this e-wallet technology has now evolved. The banks have e-wallets as well as the mobile operators
And I
also
suppose
have
in the
e-wallet
people,
capabilities.
because the people now,
And now
have
they-
these actual phones that can do this. Before we had the feature phones.
100%. So now we've got these phones that allow them to also be able to participate in transactions.
So MTN is banking on, excuse the pun, Momo
Mm.
being less prohibitive and less expensive than their first foray.
100%.
Okay.
100%. And they've actually even done a very smart thing. There was a very recent public announcement, where World Bank is actually partnering with Momo
Oh, nice.
to fund agents in the marketplace as small business owners
Yes.
to be able to take the Momo product into the communities.
Oh, now you make me go think about one other thing. So you when you were talking about M-Pesa, you touched on this being a critical success factor. And it's good that you bring up the World Bank and them doing this. Do you think the company has solved it as well as M-Pesa did in terms of the agents?
Yes, I think M-Pesa is almost 20 years old now.
Yeah.
And so it's a very well established, it's a very stable model, operating model, and so it's pretty well understood across. Lots of studies, lots of research has gone around that, and so I think the model is quite well understood, and the model has proven itself as an effective model into the underserviced and lower income communities.
So a very difficult then question. So we're sitting in our timeline right now, August. So it's 8 years, 8 months, 8 months from the end result. They're talking about Momo, so something that has run in this financial year for most of it now. What do I look for? You said earlier on with products that you love, look at your friends and look at your. What do I look for that will tell me that Momo is taking traction now?
Okay, so one, there's a couple of things to look for. So it's one is this agent network. How is this agent network rolling out?
Yeah.
And what is the scale of that rollout? It's a very well understood model. The more agents they have, the more transactionality they'll be able to get. Their focus at the moment from the reports and the public paper is they've got a customer base. What they need to enable is the customer base to transact.
Okay.
So the second thing to look for then is what transactability does Momo have?
Right.
Which products can I use a Momo purchase on?
Yes.
Yeah. What services can I get access to with a Momo account?
Okay.
Etc. Because again, it's that network effects type principle.
Okay.
And so the more service providers that are participating, the more value that creates for the Momo customer.
Yeah.
And the more the Momo customer will be transacting.
Right.
And so what's clear from what's in the public domain at the moment is that they're looking to drive out transactional revenue, and they're looking to bring on more service providers onto their platform, onto the Momo platform, for Momo customers to be able to transact with.
Okay.
So can Momo customer buy bread? Can they buy, what services can they buy, etc.? And so those are kind of the two things. The one thing is that agent network rolling out into the community, because that accesses more customers. And the second thing is the amount of services on the Momo platform and the rate of that growing, because that will generate more transactional revenue. And of course, the transactional revenue means income for.
Okay. Great. So that's an exciting space, I think, to watch for.
Yes, definitely.
What we're going to do in the next part of this. So on our side, we're going to record this twice. On your side, you're going to watch this once. Hopefully,
Yes.
once. If you're a sponsor, this is a good point where you can jump in and sponsor. We'll do a deep dive into the strategy. So I think for that next section, to your point, let's look at how are they getting to on just not the Momo side. I did focus on that because I think it's a bit of an interesting one, but how they're doing that generally in terms of the rest of the business.
Cool.
All right, so we carry on our conversation and we've been covering MTN, talking about how they've performed, looking at their annual reports. Yeah. Now we want to dive into their strategy.
Cool.
You'll be looking at the annual report I have as well. In a nutshell, maybe we'll just kick off with what do they sell, and we'll then touch into what's changing in this year when we're already halfway through that year, and then how they're going about with that change, and then what we think probably is the chances of success. So, what does MTN sell?
Yeah, if you look at their revenue, it seems they sell three things, right?
Yeah.
Services, data, and fintech.
Services, data, and fintech, indeed. And when I looked at services, I think a bit later on they do a little bit of a breakup.
What does services consist of?
And what came out for me was, which I didn't know where it sat in, was handsets. So when I think of services now, it's airtime and mobile handsets.
Sure, but MTN doesn't manufacture handsets, right?
Yes, but they have it in their they have it in their numbers.
Handsets.
Okay. Handsets.
Okay.
So, and I think it's it may not be that big in South Africa, but I think in the other geographies.
Are they starting to make their own handsets now?
They've always had that attempt every once in a while.
Okay.
I saw now, I think I was on YouTube or a game, and I see they're with Oppo. So they're pushing Oppo very hard.
Okay.
Of late. So I think they get into some exclusive partnerships.
Is Oppo a handset manufacturer?
Oppo is a handset manufacturer. Yeah. They don't sell in the US.
Okay.
They sell in LPPO, but they sell in China, very big in China. Okay. They're actually part of the same Realme. They just rebrand themselves to Oppo and push it out of the same kit. Data, anything specific around data that you could pick up in terms of what they sell?
I'm never sure whether they include SMS into their data
count.
Yeah, whether SMS is part of it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, nothing else other than 4G, and now 5G is coming down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, nothing particularly spectacular or special on the data side.
All right. And I think 5G is going to be quite key in their world. I was also interested when I was looking at in terms of what they sell, that speak of 4G and 5G doesn't translate into their revenue. They just doesn't matter what technology they're using. Airtime's airtime in terms of their space. So I'm wondering in terms of their changes.
So is airtime and data combining, or is airtime and data still separate? Is airtime under service revenue, and their data is just data?
Data is just data. So service revenue is airtime and handsets.
So the distribution and sales of handsets.
Yes.
Okay.
And then data is separate. I see they've got a fiber world. I think in the data. You've also got
they've got fiber solutions they've been rolling out.
Yeah, Supersonic I think falls under data.
Yeah. So certainly in South Africa they've been rolling out a lot of fiber.
Yeah.
Around the country, both backhaul and I suppose do they have a fiber to home solution as well?
They do. That's with Supersonic.
Okay.
I do know. I think their CEO, Calvin, has been heading that up, and it's been doing phenomenally well.
Cool.
I'm on Supersonic.
Okay.
I left Rain and came back to Supersonic, so that might be a gauge of stability, and that's why I left Rain. Because the funny thing is, when it comes to some of these data products, upload and download might not seem important to you, but the people you're talking to, upload all of a sudden becomes important.
Yes, now that we're all working, from,
we're
home,
working from home,
right?
So-
and we almost all content creators now. Our video has to stream up now.
Well, even on a Zoom call, you think people are experiencing you the way you are speaking, but if your upload is throttled, you're chittering on the other side, but you see everybody perfect.
Yeah, no. So certainly before we all just worried about what download speed we were getting when we bought a product.
Yes.
But now, certainly with COVID and working from home, upload speeds are becoming much more important.
Much more.
And so the companies have always been trading off. So they'll give you 20 megs download, and then they give you 10 or 2 up.
Yes.
And then they trade you off that way.
Yes.
But now, because very few of us were content creators,
Yes.
right? And content creators needed to upload.
Absolutely.
But now that we're all working from home, we all need upload. So we must go revisit our packages and make sure.
Yes. I think it's not just work from home. We're starting to also get new opportunities, and this is where MTN capitalizes as well in their fiber space, because you get a lot of these American companies who are saying, if you can work virtually and you can work anywhere, where's the biggest crowd of fairly well educated, English speaking, low cost individuals? And people like India come up, of course, and South Africa now strongly comes up. So you have people like Amazon who are recruiting, and in their recruitment drive, they state that you need to have a minimum upload, download speed, and therefore they do not consider anybody who's on a SIM-based fiber solution. You must be on a proper fiber solution. So when you look at that,
LTE is not good enough.
LTE is not good enough for them, which is now the Amazon in terms of how they define it. So people like MTN have to now, in that data space, not just think about wireless, then call it wireless. Now they have to consider fiber, and so that MTN Supersonic comes in to try and address that market.
I mean, those kinds of, that's great international opportunities, right? But those kinds of requirements exclude a large portion of our population who don't have access to that kind of fiber. So I know the telecommunications companies have angle or have a mandate to service the broader community. Do you get a sense from their financials that they're making headway into the more underserviced community? Is it part of their CSI? Is it part of their core strategy? Have you been able to detect that?
When I look at what they're trying to do, I don't detect it strongly. So they state, I've noticed they state about 4 things. So there's a new guy in town. There's a new sheriff, Ralph. He took over and he's now group CEO. And he talks about Ambition 2025. And in Ambition 2025, when I try and figure out what are you going to be doing, I see that he talks about growing subscribers. That's his main thing. I don't. There's Alexa. So he talks about growing subscribers. That's the big thing. So does growing subscribers mean going to this market? I don't think they define it that way. I think it's just more of urban city people. And then, but outside of that, they then also talk about expanding data coverage. That's another thing that he talks about. But when I look at the numbers in expanding data coverage, and you look at just the last 4 years, there was a almost a diagonal climb, but last year to this year, it's almost flat. It's about the same number of base stations that they had then to now, the same number of people that they reach population-wise from then to now. So it's not coming out that they're going after this market. They verbally say that they want to go after this market, but when I look at that Ambition 2025, it's not. It doesn't seem like it's a key demographic for them.
And you kind of saying they need to. I mean, if they want to get on board more subscribers, then they got to increase their coverage.
Absolutely.
as a key enabler of that growing subscriber base, or is there opportunity for them in terms of densifying the current subscriber base they have, like in other words, selling more SIMs to the same people, like selling SIMs for their IoT devices, perhaps selling SIMs for their home automation.
It depends. We go back to MTN's vision of everybody deserves, the benefits of a modern life. So that to me would translate to you want to take the modern life to the people, and densification doesn't live up to that dream. So when I look at the strategy and I look at what they're doing this year, that's what I'm looking for. And in that world, your data coverage has to, at the very least, start measuring that very, very differently. So you start looking at rural versus urban versus peri-urban, and we're not seeing that language come about. Because if you talk about whatever, 95% population coverage, 98% population coverage, if 90% of the population lives in 2%, so that's kind of, I don't see that coming out very strongly. And it will be interesting in the next financial results is are they starting to become targeted at going after this market, and what is this market worth to them doesn't also come out in there. So I think they go for the strategy that you talk about, which is just to densify, to get more money out of your wallet, and then maybe get people who are on Vodacom or people who are on Cell C to cross the fence is kind of that's what I see the strategy.
Their brand positioning has always been more middle and upper middle. The more high-end type buyer is kind of the brand that they've always positioned at. And so maybe years and years of that positioning, they can't find a way to the lower income segments and offering, albeit MTN were the inventors of prepaid.
Yes. They, and maybe just to be a little bit more fair to them in terms of going after that market, they did do something new last year, which they have in this book. They brag about it, called Ayoba. And Ayoba is a instant messaging platform that is exclusively owned by MTN. So it's WhatsApp, but for MTN. And I think when I read the strategy, especially in the Ambition 2025, they then take this mobile money concept, the Momo, and they consider that like their phase one. And Ayoba, the instant messaging, also part of their phase one. And what they're trying to talk about is the phase two of that is combining the two of them. And they call that in their world mobile commerce.
Okay.
So I think when they think about that market, they don't think about that market from a voice point of view or from a data point of view, having the same needs that we do here, fiber, getting jobs. They just think of them as people who are unbanked. That's what comes out of people who don't have great banking opportunities. And so they view that market as a banking opportunity market versus a airtime market.
So are they using Ayoba to create a community, and then Momo to provide that community with financial services?
From a statement point of view. So again, we live in the country and we wanna experience what they say. So that's what they say. They're saying Ayoba plus Momo equals a new complex product geared towards the market. But I don't know anyone who uses Ayoba.
And you wouldn't be part of that target market, right?
Well, they exclude anyone who doesn't have a Samsung phone, so or an Android phone. Let me be a bit more broader.
So it's Android.
So it's Android specific. So you exclude everybody with an iOS phone, and I understand it if that demographic takes advantage and thinks of the world like that. But we've seen even people like WhatsApp, people like Apple, understand that it's an ecosystem. You can't create camps in there. So I'm not seeing. I mean, to your question, and I don't see that strategy being executed. I see it being said.
Okay. Do you feel that in that part of their strategy, you're using the word camps, that they're creating their own kind of platform and they're trying to bring capabilities to that one singular platform, as opposed to being part of a broader ecosystem?
They state this in their ambition, and they talk about these building platforms. So the way they view the world, is they feel they have a few platforms that are best of breed. Whatever the platforms are, to them they know they're best of breed, and they see Ioba being another platform that comes into this best of breed world that they have, and they see Momo coming in and being. And then with these platforms in play, they then go out to the market and they start offering ever more tailored and complex products and services.
There's a theory out there. I can't remember who propositioned this. I'll go find the names later. But basically, it says that if a new product doesn't do more than 10% of the revenue for a company within a particular period of time,
Right.
that it's unlikely that that product is going to, one, survive, or two, that it's going to have the kind of impact that the company needs for it to grow. And if you look at their current services revenue,
Yes.
I mean, it's quite a big ask. Do you see this in the next 5 years being 10% of their revenue? And that would have to be somewhere in the region of about almost 10 billion.
I don't know, because I struggle with things being clear. I don't know if MTN is clear, so it's good they've got a new guy there, Ralph. So maybe that will become clear. I struggle to answer that question because their digital space is 7% of their product line. And their digital space has been running for the past 5 years or so, and I don't know what it is. Does it include Ioba, not include Ioba, you know? And then you've still got, in that space, you still have mobile money sitting separately on its own. You still have airtime and data, you know? So it's so muddied that if I was to push for an answer, I'd say I don't see it surviving. But in how they define it, I think the services are going to make up more than 10%. They are going to be able to diversify, but I don't feel like they're able to articulate very clearly the separation between their mobile commerce, their digital, and their data. You know, it blurs and depends who.
Sure. So of course, there's also this view in South Africa that we've hit saturation in terms of SIM cards in our population.
Right.
And so the mobile operators are diversifying now, looking for other areas of growth.
Yeah.
It does seem to be fintech is one particular area they're all pursuing very, very hard.
Yeah.
Is that fintech the big growth for the mobile hub for MTN in the future? Fintech?
They're positioning themselves for it, and when we talk about 4 years from now, maybe it's not a bad thing to position for it. But I think the big thing for the mobile operators is actually fiber. I think the
That's funny.
yes
Because it's the opposite of being a mobile operator.
opposite of being a mobile operator. The CEO of Vumatel, for example, Dietloff, always says converged is the future for a mobile network operator. The ability to give to your customer a fixed product in the way of fiber and a mobile product, and seamlessly hop in between the two is the key view of the next 10 years. And when you look everywhere, it is that. You look at Vodafone.
British Telecom.
So I think yes, absolutely. And so to MTN's credit, you know, they got that right. And I think they are on the right thing for them. They don't have to worry about converged. You know, let some capital project run and try and make the things work together in the background, and keep your eye on the next thing. And financial inclusion is huge in the country. So I think it's a good play to diversify into fintech, and it's well suited. You know, if you were to put a Vodacom against, and I picked Vodacom as a non-MTN company, and you put them against Itala Bank, you know, as people who came and knocked on your door tomorrow and said, hey, we have now innovated, we are now 4IR, we are now all the buzzwords, we've got new product for you. You know, who are you going to go with? You don't know who Itala Bank is. You know, you're going to go with the Vodacom. So that's a very big
brand.
Yeah, very big.
Brand strength.
So I think it's a clever, very, very clever strategy to become a fintech serious player.
Okay. So in terms of these emerging products, I suppose, or emerging strategies to see, what are the flags that we're looking out for? So you mentioned earlier base stations aren't growing, etc. But you're also saying converged is important, and so do we start looking at now, what is that fiber rollout? How many kilometers of fiber do they have around the country? Are those going to be good flags for us to keep an eye on?
It's an interesting question, eh? You know, from a mobile network point of view, I mean, these are not good indicators for them or to keep an eye on. I think it's important that they are there. When I look at their strategy, they talk about this API marketplace, MTN. And I found something called, I don't even know how you say it, Genosis or something.
Oh, yes.
I have no idea. What does it mean for customers? What is it?
I came across it a while back.
Yeah, I have no idea what it is. But your question for me, why I scratched in that direction is I'm looking for the ability to give to customers intelligence. Because where they sit is they are one of the few brands and products that are with us all the time. Even when we go to the bathroom, they're with us. So these are probably the best positioned people to start giving you advice, giving you insights to your behavior, and then nudge you towards a product, you know, that suits them, that they can then create. And in that space, it means interoperability. This thing working with that thing. You know, your bank talking to your post office, talking to your vehicle, talking to your printer. You know, it's just and so I started looking and saying, are they looking at being more interoperable?
And this is why API piqued your interest, right?
And
because
that's
API is a tool for that interoperability.
Yes.
So
I think that would be one good thing. If you're an investor, you're looking at who are you building an ecosystem? Are you an island, or are you trying to plug into everything? Because if you're trying to plug into everything, then you understand your role in the consumer's life, which is, and you get that good language coming out of MTN. You're a platform. You're a place for people to whip the phone out and launch the next adventure, purchase, whatever it may be, you know, from the palm of their hand. And the more things you can plug into, the more I believe you're going to be successful.
And in terms of those new products, I mean, we've all now seen the cloud service providers starting to emerge and dominate the world. So the AWSs of the world, Azure, Google Cloud, IBM, Bluemix. I think they're changing the name now. I recently saw in the newspaper MTN advertising for a cloud, a strategic head of cloud, and it got me thinking as a group who have quite a big footprint across Africa, and of course to run their own operations, they have substantial data centers within each country. And could they leverage that infrastructure into a cloud type offering, like an AWS, but of course they've now already got the physical footprints, and just to now convert that to a cloud services offering throughout Africa. Because the advantage that they have, of course, is the footprint, the physical footprint that they have.
Yeah.
Azure and Amazon AWS don't have that physical footprint.
Yeah.
AWS just got into South Africa,
Yeah.
albeit that AWS was invented in South Africa. Did you know that?
No.
In Cape Town.
Ah.
The first AWS was actually,
That's interesting.
it was originated here, South Africa.
So we can claim reparations.
South Africans. You can talk to Blue Origin. South Africans invented AWS.
Right.
And
Right.
it's pretty cool. It's one of our best exports ever.
Yes.
But having said that, I rather like that as a strategic opportunity for MTN. You know, they've got the base capabilities already in place. It's really just commercializing it.
I mean, so let's pull it back to where could we see this in the annual report? I think I'm opposite to you. I don't like that strategy. And the reason I don't is because when you mention cloud, the moment the word cloud happens, I see a business. I see no individual in the world, individual at a personal doing stuff and going on about it, making decisions and having choices around cloud. The decisions that we make for whatever service that we consume comes with whatever you bought. So if you buy a nanny cam, and the nanny cam says you can have internet storage, so when you're at work you can see it, you don't make any decision. Whatever the nanny cam chose, AWS, that's what you get. That's what you get. And when I think about MTN, and they do have it, they have an enterprise division in their annual report, but I don't think of them as people whose strategy revolves around businesses. I think of them more as people whose strategy heavily relies on consumers.
Okay.
And to take away the focus of improving, yours and my experience at a consumer level at the expense of creating some kind of competence on the cloud side, I think will do more damage in the long run. One of the things they have in there is they believe that net promoter score is very important to them. And the net promoter score, the way I understand it, is, you ask people, would you recommend this product to your friend?
Yeah.
And you just look at that as the is this person going to promote you or not promote you? And they list themselves there as number 1 in 15 countries. And they've got 21 countries. So that means they're not number 1 in 6 countries. And for me, your focus should be get to number 1 in 6 countries rather than roll out really great cloud solutions for businesses.
Sure.
Yeah.
I see also now, I mean, you bring up the many countries that
Yes.
so MTN is a big group, right?
Yes.
I mean, they've got a lot of operations.
Yeah.
And like it's mind-boggling how complex that can be.
Yeah.
From a big group point of view, but it's also very clear from the financials that from a revenue growth point of view, South Africa is nowhere.
Yeah.
Right, and MTN is largely being carried by the group at the moment. Nigeria is showing double-digit growth, and the rest of the group is showing double-digit growth. South Africa is like at 1% growth now. Yeah. You could argue that's an environmental thing. Our economy is in a mess. We've been in a recession for over 2 years.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So MTN is proving to be a rand or South African economy hedge product.
Yeah.
Almost, right? In terms of, despite when I say hedge, I mean it's a defense against our poor economy.
Yes. Yes.
It's an asset you can get access to.
Yeah.
It's got a global footprint, it's got an international footprint.
Yeah.
And that protects you from the poor growth happening in South Africa.
Yeah.
The poor economy that's happening in South Africa. So I certainly, from that perspective, like MTN as an asset.
Right.
Because they seem to be resilient against the...
Yeah.
Because despite the fact that the South African market is growing so slow and the South African revenue is still so poor, they're able to show good growth overall as an organization.
And I agree with you. And I think if you're investing and you're looking for companies to invest in, MTN ticks so many boxes that a lot of other companies can't. To be in 21 markets, a majority of those in Africa, is very, very difficult for South African companies to achieve. And MTN has done this fairly well. They do run into normal problems in terms of some of the countries that they're in, but by and large, they are who even retail companies look up to, and that's always good. Somebody who's able to tame Africa is somebody you want if you're investing and you're thinking about that hedge and you're thinking about how do I make sure that my wealth is diversified on the continent versus just within South Africa. That puts them, with a couple of more ticks than other companies. So I definitely agree with you there. Yeah. Speaking of financials, I want to go into that section, but I did, before going into that, just as a headline, now when you read the financial report, when you read the annual report, not the financial section, and they're talking about doubling their fintech numbers. They're talking about this mobile commerce that we spent a bit of time on. We didn't touch on their industrial IoT that they have under enterprise that they mentioned. They don't have numbers or anything around it, but they talk about Internet of Things, new technology that they want to dive into in terms of this year. And then they talk about efficiency. They have big groups of cut the fat everywhere. And they want to do that by, I always call it yet another thing as a service. So they're doing yet another thing as a service.
So as an internal service or service to customers?
I don't know. When I read it, it's not a service out by. They have like network as a service. So for me, that feels internal. But they have enterprise. They do have some network service offerings.
So when you say enterprise, where they target businesses as opposed
as
to
they target businesses,
individuals.
Yes. So when I read that network as a service in their annual report, I don't know if they're talking about themselves and getting rid of non-core things and getting third-party suppliers to then provide that, which is great from a you shrinking your operating costs down, or is it something that they're providing to other people and they want to improve? Every time I read something as a service, I just think I don't know what they're doing, but it's always good to see. It's a word. It's a nice word to see there, but I don't know what it means. That's can I have my kid as a service? What does it mean? Is it just, I'll have, when they're happy, I'll consume.
Sure.
And then when they cry, I can just switch it off. Then your spouse worries. I don't know why everything has to become a service.
Sure.
But
it's this post-industrialized world, right?
Absolutely.
Of service enabling
everything. But you see those kind of words there. So I suppose the question I have before we go into the financials is, and I break it up into fintech, mobile commerce, enterprise services, network as a service, and API marketplace. That API marketplace. What are your thoughts around their chances of success? Because these are their ambitions. Beginning January 1 of this year, these were their bold ambitions.
Sure.
Now that we've read the strategy and we've tried to think about everything that we know, read up about everything that we know, research, whatever, what are their chances of a success when it comes to their fintech and their numbers is to double their fintech business?
So of course the fintech comes off a low base.
Yes.
Particularly in South Africa, they come off a low base. In the rest of the group,
they've been there for
yeah. Now it's very interesting that you separate mobile commerce and fintech from each other.
I don't. They do.
Yeah. Okay. So it's very interesting that they do. Exactly. They do that, right? Yeah. So that suggests to me that they're going to go into a more pure financial services type model where maybe they're looking at more insurance type products.
They do.
They're looking at more lending type products.
Yes, they do.
And they're separating that from mobile money type solutions, which are payment solutions, which is kind of where the fintech kind of started from, was the mobile money.
Yeah.
which is really just a payment system,
In
right?
fact,
Payment infrastructure.
absolutely. And they're bringing saving into that as well. When I read that, and then they have,
Payments, lending.
you see, and then again it gets messed up again. Then they have mobile commerce. So I don't know. Who knows when you read this? But anyway,
Okay,
what's
so-
the chances
so-
of success on the payments, lending, insurance, and savings side of it? Maybe let's exclude mobile commerce.
Yeah, so like for an organization, for the mobile operators, just generally, it's an easy money space because they've got a good footprint of individual customers. To your point, they've got you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And so financial transactions around that, as long as you have a decent offering, you've got the access, and you can deliver on that offering, you can provide a good service, I think you've got a very good chance as an organization. So they've got all the makings, they've got the footprint, they've got the capacity, they've got the technology, the infrastructure. They can definitely make solid progress on fintech.
I agree. On the mobile commerce side, and I think Ayoba is what they attach to that mobile, to their ambition of bringing Ayoba into Momo. What is their chances there of success?
So what you're referring to is the South African strategy. And the South African strategy is very far behind the rest of the group.
Yes.
So the rest of the group in this mobile money space is making loads of money. And South Africa, like
It's not there.
in 2019 they had 0 people on the mobile money platform in South Africa, right? So South Africa mobile money is coming from a low base. What you're describing is the strategy. The announcement from the World Bank funding their agents, etc. I mean, that investment, $25 million coming in to set up the, so they've got good foundations to build a great ecosystem there.
Good distribution.
And they've got a good adoption rate in terms of Momo. They've got a distribution footprint that's quite wide. I mean, all the MTN stores in South Africa, etc. And they are now bringing on other players onto their platform, other vendors onto their platform. So and they're following a very similar strategy to an F&B, for example, with their e-wallets. Kind of thing. So it's kind of that, and they're going after that unbanked market segment, which there is a lot of in South Africa. There's a lot of cash floating around in that space, and if you can convert that cash into digital currency,
then you've got a good business.
Then you've got a good business.
So reasonable, I think. So you're basically saying a reasonable chance of success there.
They've brought in some
well articulated.
They brought in some new people with experience and stuff of Africa and having done in-person type solutions in other countries. So I think they're on a good footing on that one, definitely.
And then on the enterprise space, they refer to industrial IoT. What are their chances of success there? And when I read the document, what I find is a difference to, as we've covered now, the fintech and the mobile commerce, is no numbers and not as clear an articulation as I get from the other two.
So you've got to dig into the IoT strategy a little bit. So what are they doing? Are they just taking the telemetry that they have, capability that they've always had, and then because they want to put a SIM card in a device?
Absolutely.
Are they setting up a different network? How are they tackling this IoT world?
And for me, to the question, my answer would be not a good chance of success because that isn't coming out of the annual report. So I'm thinking, what's happening with the team there? Have they internalized? Have they articulated a goal amongst themselves? Have they internalized it and are they executing it? And when I read the annual report, my answer is no. Because it would be there if everybody understood what it was. I mean, when we talk about double fintech, we don't work there, but just from reading this annual report, we're super clear on what they're trying to do, and I don't see that.
That
when it
clarity,
comes to that clarity in the enterprise space.
space.
Not saying enterprise won't be profitable. I'm just saying the chances. I don't even know what what it is that must be successful because they haven't articulated that.
So in the enterprise spaces, IT, it's also the fiber solutions. What else is in there?
Let me just check.
What else is
I
in
like
the
that little
enterprise
picture
space?
that they have up there. They talk about unified comms. They talk about IoT. They talk about cloud. And then they talk about SD-WAN, which is software-defined WANs. That's about as useful as Tektron in the Caltex world. What is Tektron? What does it look like? I don't know. It's on the advert. It goes in your engine, and there's little men who clean. So in the enterprise space, they also have this SD-WAN.
Yes. I suppose. If this is this is what they're offering to business people, right?
Yeah.
So if you took this to a business person and you said, "Yeah, I'm going to get you unified comms, IoT, cloud, and SD-WAN," what's the business person going to respond to you and say, "Yeah, I want that one, and I don't want this one"?
And that's the point, right? Because these languages, to me, when I read them, aren't business languages.
Yeah, they're internal.
They're internal mobile network operator languages. If I walked up to anybody who's a mobile network specialist or worker, professional in whatever space they are in, they would struggle to understand why nobody understands these terms.
Sure. So if I venture to make a bold statement here, when it comes to enterprise services, maybe they don't have sufficient empathy with their customers.
Yes.
They haven't done that empathy work yet, and so don't know how to position their product and value propositions around that. I mean, is that coming through for us here?
Not at all. And we live in a space where you can demystify it a little bit and think about how we go about our lives. We used to be at the office from 9 to 5. We're now working from our homes, and we're now consuming from the businesses in our locale a whole lot more, whether that be using Uber Eats or actually driving out to the store. Those businesses is how we are affecting them. What is MTN when we read the word enterprise? How is MTN helping those businesses get ready for us? And when I read these terms, that doesn't come to mind. So I agree with you with the empathy. They're not from an enterprise point of view. They're from a supplier point of view. And I'm sure they're great products. They probably give them amazing capabilities as a company to go and give amazing services.
For sure.
But they don't come through on the annual report in a way that shows me that they understand how their customers change.
100%. And we know, right? Customer empathy, understanding your customer leads to great services.
Absolutely.
And leads to great customer uptake.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing.
And it would be interesting. I mean, you take that NPS and they should be very proud of that NPS. Again, that's why I didn't support the earlier strategy that you're talking about the data centers. Is because they're very good at living the life of a person with a handset. Because they do, and they're very good at it. So if you had to take that net promoter score and you separate it from consumer to businesses, I don't think they would be number one in the business space in all the markets that they're in, because they, to what we're reading here, they're not speaking from the point of view of the customer.
And we're referring specifically to enterprise services. In this
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that API.
Well, the broader question, yes, and going to the API, and I suppose we can
enterprise services.
We can put
we still just
both. The chances of
just
success.
On the API, So what's API?
So according to this API, and I want to speak as I read it, so you can see the ridiculousness of what they've typed in here. API marketplace, right? Means that what MTN is going to do is they're going to have a marketplace that's going to aggregate, it's going to exchange, and it's going to monetize. Those are the three things that it's going to do. I don't know if that's the marketplace, the API, or the customer. But you're going to aggregate, exchange, and monetize.
Okay, so what are you exchanging?
Let me go to fintech, just so you can see because I don't know the answer to that question. Fintech, they have payments, lending, insurance, right? Which means as a customer using fintech, I will be able to do something with payments. I'll be able to do something with lending. I'll be able to do something with insurance.
I'll be able to get loans.
I don't even want to use
I'll
those
be able
words.
to pay for things.
No, I don't even want to translate. I
Sure.
just want to say, as a customer, I'm clear already in the space that I'm in this financial services space. I'm already clear as a customer when you say to me, I've got a payments thing. And I go, oh, okay, this is coming with another speed point. You know? Or I've got a lending thing. Oh, okay, he wants me to borrow more money. You know, it's clear to me.
Yes.
So now let's transfer that and let's go to this API marketplace.
Okay.
So what MTN is saying is, as an API marketplace, Mr. Customer, you will aggregate.
So who is the customer?
Let's not even go down that road.
Okay.
Let's say we knew who the customer was. You will aggregate, sir.
Okay, what am I aggregating?
The API marketplace thing. Okay, but you can exchange it. If you don't like it, the second thing you can do is give you exchange. You can exchange it.
Okay, so what's clear, right? is again like these guys, like the API marketplace team is even further away from
than the
empathy for customer than the other guys.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So they're very caught up in what their capability can do.
Yes, yes.
Versus what a customer would use it for.
Absolutely.
And what the customer would get out of it.
Absolutely.
And why is it not part of what is it API as a service?
Well, they do love the word as a service, and they haven't used it here. So it's not API as a service.
Okay.
So it's an API marketplace.
Okay. Were you able to glean who the target customer is?
The people who are swapping APIs right now. What's our new thing that they have? NFTs. What's it? Not is it NFTs? Yeah, the non-fungible world. You know, you're able to transact now. It was Bitcoin at the beginning. You know, because everyone didn't understand what Bitcoin was, and now everybody accepts our level of understanding of Bitcoin. Not that we should understand it anymore. We understand it enough.
Yes.
And now we went into NFTs. And NFTs are these non-fungible tokens that allow people to take photos of themselves and sell them for millions and millions of US dollars. Nobody knows what on earth they are. I suppose there's an NFT marketplace. Maybe that's what APIs are to this car. There's a place where people are changing APIs every day, opening their jacket. Would you like an API? And they're going to give you a chance to aggregate them.
Okay, definition of the word API, of the three-letter acronym.
And it's a very and do we want to abuse our listeners with that word? I mean, it comes from the software world, right?
Yes.
So it's an application programming interface.
Yes.
Right. So there's a marketplace for developers. That's at the very worst. If I'm reading this.
Okay, so now you're putting two and two
yes,
together,
I'm
right?
saying
You're making some assumptions, yeah?
Yeah, so as an investor, potential investor into this company, in fact, I'm not even a potential investor because up until now, to be fair to MTN, we are saying it sounds like they tick so many boxes that if you're looking at a basket, you would heavily consider them. If I was investing, I have no problems giving my money to MTN because I'm going to see quite a nice return to it. And I'm a bit excited because now I own a couple of shares, or might even attend an annual general meeting from MTN. And indeed the AGM is coming up, so I want to attend it. I don't want to look like an idiot over there when they talk about all these different things. So when I get to this API marketplace section, I'm going to make up some story to your question. So I'll sit there and I'll say, API sounds very developer-y. So it sounds like it's something geared towards people who can code, who can create, who can develop programs. Maybe programs for the phone, maybe programs for iPads, maybe programs for businesses.
So what other API marketplaces exist?
I don't buy APIs generally. I haven't run out yet. I I have a cupboard full of no APIs, and I haven't needed one yet. But if I did need one, I don't know if there is a marketplace that I would go to. So,
Okay, so that's interesting. MTN being in 20 countries in Africa, an API marketplace would, if it's something for developers, then those developers would have access to 21 markets, assuming. So if you built a API to a thing that is now available in 21 territories.
And again, and you're right, but let's go back to empathy. When you use the word developer, you're not talking about a customer.
Not
so
yet.
Who's this customer that has these developers? That's where I struggle when I read a term like API marketplace in a world where I've understood the last three products. You know, at a push, I may even understand network as a service. You know, they've got fiber customers, ISP customers, whatever it may be, who I will assume need a network and they can supply this as a service. I do get lost when I get to this part because it doesn't speak to who I think MTN's customer is. Because these two, by the way, the network as a service and the API marketplace should fall under enterprise if there is a couple of companies in their whole South African pool of companies that are interested in APIs. So it would be a segment under enterprise. But when it comes out like this, it sounds like something that would be sold to me and you, because that's who I know MTN to be. And they have the enterprise bucket, which means it must be coming to me. I must be the person who's going to buy network as a service, and I must be the person who's going to buy API marketplace. And from that point of view, the articulation isn't good. And then I jump back to my I don't think there's a reasonable chance of success because they haven't articulated it well. If you're unable to say what it is, how will you measure it?
Sure. Now, network as a service.
Yeah.
Just very quickly.
Yes.
Open mobile. What is that?
Again, if I go to network as a service, I think that should be under it should be under enterprise services. It shouldn't be standing out on its own because fintech solutions are being sold to me as a customer. Digital services are being sold to me as a customer, consumer. Enterprise services says, if I'm a consumer, don't look at this bucket. And then when I look at network as a service, my eye goes back to it. So open mobile must be coming to a consumer.
So what is
and to be fair to MTN, I know it's not. So I think everything under network as a service is not being sold to consumers. It should be under enterprise. And so the chances of success as a summary, I think, are low. So when I think about open mobile, now I have to think what kind of business needs a network, right, where they're able to offer or have mobiles, cell phones, handsets, airtime, but it's open. So sometimes it's Cell C, sometimes it's Vodacom, sometimes it's MTN. And I say that knowing that it's their competitors to just illustrate.
It's not clear.
I have no idea what it is.
Not clear at all.
Not clear.
Fixed as a service, we're saying, is fiber fixed line capability.
So should we stop being facetious and say I don't even understand what fixed is?
Okay.
As a commodity that before it even gets changed into a service.
Yes.
I don't know what fixed is.
Yes. And then you get edge and DC, which I'm assuming it refers to their data centers. But
Again, that's language.
Edge and IoT is kind of the same category, and they've split that across. And then the next one, cloud is in enterprise services, but cloud communication is in network as a service.
So edge and DC, and is reflected very poorly here, and I don't even so I won't change my analysis on the chances of success of this area. But what edge is to the home person is it's all about the experience that you can provide as a business to your consumers by not having to move the data all the way from a person's house all the way back to the DC, the data center, do some kind of crunching and move it all the way back to their house again, and we experience that the most common and universal way is through Netflix. So when you say edge, what they are trying to say is, for a company called Netflix, we want to now start providing solutions where they don't have to move their data up and down in the neighborhood where a lot of people are subscribed to Netflix. They can put down a storage facility at the edge of their network and let the people not have to, so you get much better speeds. You're viewing at 4K, because the first person who watches it is a horrible experience for them because they're fetching it all the way from America, but the next 2,000 customers can watch that same content without that content. So that's what edge and data center, I know that's what they wanted to say here. But when we come back to the annual report, I would have rather, instead of saying that this section is about network as a service, start speaking to companies like Netflix. So rather have this section be about content producers.
Content delivery.
Content and delivery. Well, not network, because network is internal. It's about content delivery businesses. Businesses that are into delivering content, and then they start speaking quite
So all the cloud providers have this thing called CDNs, right?
Yes.
Content delivery distribution networks. But
Yes.
what it basically is, that they provide that service where they will distribute the content globally across all their data centers.
Yes.
So when a customer accesses it from there, they access the internet, but they get routed to their local
postbox,
local repository
storage,
of that content.
Yes.
And then of course it's a short.
Absolutely.
And that gives a better customer experience.
Absolutely. And
so it's that kind of.
Yes, and I'll be unfair to them because we know that world. We are explaining it now. But the important thing is not what we've said, because that's gibberish. It's that it's not in the annual report. And if it's not in the annual report, it's not clear to this team what it is they have to do to be successful in that space. And so from that point of view, I'm saying the chances of success are not as high as the others. Okay, so let's jump into probably the last part of the MTN annual report analysis, helping somebody to decide, I'm all in if I'm at this point, or I'm all out at this point. A good place when you're reading an annual report is to go to the heart of it, the nub of it, the numbers. No translations, no what does CDN mean, what does SD-WAN mean, none of that stuff. We go to the universally understood accounting standards and we read this information. But of course, a lot of us aren't accountants. So you want more insight from these things. So we understand generally the broad concepts in accounting, like revenue. We all know revenue means sales, and the only way you can get revenue is if you sold something. But insight will be, did we sell more stuff than we sold last year? Or if we sold more stuff and we made less profit, this would come out in the financials without having to be translated, because we'd see some numbers or ratios dip or increase. So I would love for us to jump into the financials, and I know thanks to your degree, that little degree, that instead of reading the numbers, you could point out to a potential investor if things are improving or getting worse or relatively the same in various buckets.
Sure. Can we pause?
Well, we can pause. They won't pause because then they'll carry on. Right. Okay. So we enter the last chapter, the last part of our podcast. Dive into the numbers. The numbers. So looking at MTN and everything that we know about it, we have some tools that we get from our MBA. And we need to find a way to not only get it right now for MTN, but over the number of companies that we intend to shoot, kind of have a language that our listeners are introduced to and will understand, that is not to accountancy.
Sure.
So in general, when it comes to numbers, when you hit that section of the financials, you get two main set of accounts that we will use. There should be three. You can also look at the cash flow, but we won't do that for now. And the first one is known as the balance sheet, or the statement of financial position. And the reason this is important is it says what assets that the company has, and through how you talk about those assets, you can find out how well the company is leveraging those assets to create value. And then the second one, which,
do you want to give some examples of assets?
an example of assets would be, let's look at your house. Let's make it nice and easy. A house is an asset to an individual, and the reason it's an asset is it gives you the basic Maslow hierarchy of needs. It gives you shelter, and it's a place where you can store your food. The way that our houses are constructed, it gives you safety as well. And so we look at this asset as to this family as something that generates value. Now, a 3-bedroom house for a bachelor is a great asset, but a 3-bedroom house for a 6-member family, who's staying with grandparents or whatever it may be, is not as valuable, right? And over time, you, as a 6-member family, want to move to a 6-bedroom house. It's still an asset called a house, but we can look at aspects of that house and say, by moving to another house, what does it give you? Or in the same house, you build a shed at the back, you build back rooms, whatever it may be.
Sure.
You expand your asset. We can find all of that information when we look at the balance sheet, especially when we compare it to last year's balance sheet.
Sure. And different types of assets. So are assets always physical things?
Sometimes, the argument is you can have your asset is your means of production, right? And so there's the plant, property, and equipment. So you've come across that as almost the standard physical thing that most accountants believe in. Everyone needs to have the plant,
physical thing.
The physical thing. But it extends to beyond that. There's patents. Sometimes if you think about formulas, you think about I like to use soups as an example. Your grandmother may have this specific recipe of the quantities of ingredients to put in. Everybody knows the ingredients, but how you put in the ingredients, when you put them in, and the boil, the temperature it should be, all of that, you could write it down as a secret recipe. That secret recipe can be a patent, because it's the thing that creates the moorish.
As an example, Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola, absolutely. They've got the whole thing in Atlanta. The vault, and in the vault, and no one person can know. And you can create all of that mystique. But absolutely right. It's not a physical thing. It's knowledge, and and anyone who has this knowledge has the ability to create Coca-Cola. And then there's people as well. You've got agencies or companies that rely on having actuaries. Just take Discovery. Discovery's got a lot of people who can analyze data and predict how the risk will shift for this organization, and how it can provide products that make it as competitive as possible. And those people, actuaries, are very, very hard to come by. And so you don't see them in a balance sheet, but in another podcast one day we should be arguing, should people be on a balance sheet when they're that kind of individual?
Sure. Apparently there's some research, there's some policy changes going on now. This whole 360-degree view, impact of financials, and And there's apparently policy changes afoot that is starting to exactly the human beings, because they don't sit on the balance sheet anymore at the moment, but they are a material asset if they hold the knowledge.
Which I would support. I mean, we've all worked in places where yes, they say you're replaceable, but when you're speaking to that kind of knowledge, it's so hard to replace that it is an asset. I mean, a building is replaceable, you sure building, but could we not burn this one down? So
sure.
And then the last probably type of asset, maybe not the last, but one that I also look for when I look at is investments. Sometimes you're invested in another business that's generating a profit, and you need that profit, and it would come into your balance sheet. So if you go back to the household, somebody having a job, the breadwinner bringing in, that's an asset that income coming in. So we kind of look at that as the balance sheet, and then the other one is then a statement of our revenues, and that's known as the income statement. Of course, it's a log of all the money coming in, how much profit we made, how much it cost us, and then there's some terms we may or may not touch on as we go through it. But that's a good one to then look at is how profitable is the organization. And when we hit this section, what we're going to try and do for our listeners is not go through that detail, because you can get that detail just by downloading the annual report, but try and create and look at some kind of insights. We look at past performance. So what did you do the last time, and what are you doing this time? And we'll compare that and see if the line is going up, is stagnant, or going down.
Sure. And
what does it mean for the things that we're looking at? And then I think there's probably 3 or 4 different types of buckets that we can look at when we look at a combination of these 2 documents to see what shape MTN is in financially.
Cool. And as a business, right?
As a business, absolutely. So I think the way I generally like to start on is there's 4 ratios, and by ratios you take one number from the balance sheet or income statement, and you divide it by another number from the balance sheet or income statement, because we don't hold these numbers in our heads, and we're just looking for something that's common language. So from 0 to 100%. If you're 100%, you're amazing. If you're 0%, you're not amazing. And we look at, what was it the last time? 20%. What is it now? 25%. It's improved, and 25% is great for this kind of company. Or just 20%, 15%, and 15% is poor. So that kind of thing. So I look at four ratios that I like to start with. The first one looks at how much you can sell with the assets that you have. So it's a sale asset ratio. The second one is then, of the things that you sold, how profitable were you?
Okay.
If it costs you 90 cents for the thing that you sold for 1 rand, you're only 10 cents profitable, versus it cost you 60 cents, and you're 40 cents profitable.
Yeah. And so if we just took those 2 ratios, right? Yeah. What they would be telling you is, if I increase the assets, how much more sales I would be able to get.
I'd be absolutely.
And in the same way, if I increase my sales, how much additional profit would I be able to get?
Absolutely.
And so that allows you then to link the investment into assets to sales and revenue.
Absolutely. Okay. That's right. And when I look at those 2 numbers, I think from an MTN point of view, I think of the first number, which is its sales to asset ratio. The detail, they have increased their assets, but they're as equally, they've increased their sales. In fact, they've increased their sales to be the same number that they had with a lower class of asset. So they used to be at 50%, and they've increased their assets. Let me just see what they should have my numbers over here. So their total assets grew by, how do we work that one out? From 302, I think these are in million. The asset base grew from 302 million to 348 million, if I'm right, or 300. And so it's quite a substantial jump, but their sales grew as well over there. So that's good. That's
So that's kept that correlation
absolutely.
of increased assets, increased sales,
Acquire, build more assets, buy more things, but the sales are showing that these are they're working, they're sweating their assets.
No, 100%. So in the case of an MTN, I suppose as a mobile network provider, the key assets would be there for the towers, and the assumption is the more towers they roll out, the more subscribers they can have on that network, and that increases their revenue.
Absolutely, and what you can easily do is put up a tower where there's no people, and then we would see that ratio come down. More assets, but not more sales. So you're absolutely right. They are making the right decisions
and placing them in the right places,
the right locations, that they keep producing the sales that we expect them to produce. And then on the second one is, of the sales that they produce, are they profitable? And the good news for MTN, they used to be on a 7% profit before, when I look at it, and with this new revenue number, they've increased their profitability to 10%. Actually, just under 11%, so it's almost a 4%.
And that's before the new guy joined?
That's in his tenure, because he joined around September, so he was there for the last quarter.
Okay.
But then again, Ralph, we say the new guy, Ralph's been there. He was the CFO.
Sure.
Right. So he's it's all under his watch. This one is just with Rob having exited around September. So that's great. That's great in terms of numbers. This is a great business to be in. It's churning. It's growing its asset base when we look at these ratios, and it's growing its sales because of those asset bases, and it's becoming more profitable.
And that's the kind of thing you want to be seeing. Absolutely.
Now, another ratio that we look at, and I won't dive into it because they're kind of flat on this one, they're kind of okay, is we look at now equity of a company. The equity of a company it has liabilities. So you buy a car, that's your asset, but you have to finance it from the bank, that's your liability. The difference between the two, as your debt comes down, and let's assume your car doesn't depreciate, as your debt comes down with the bank, that's your equity.
The value of the car, the debt that you have.
Absolutely. It's much better with houses. So we also look at that.
Because your house typically increases in value.
Absolutely.
As you pay your bond off over the 30 years.
Absolutely.
And so your equity in your house increases.
Absolutely.
As you pay in that way.
And the reason we look at this is because now we've said they've increased their asset base, which we've loved. They are making the same amount of sales as if they were on that lower asset base, which means they're sweating this new asset, and they are now more profitable.
They've improved their profitability.
But they could have done this, when we look at the balance sheet, by borrowing. So yes, they have a Ferrari, but they've also got a new line item where they have to pay for the Ferrari, which they didn't have before. So all these numbers could be great, but the equity, that's the real value for yourself as an investor, hasn't grown. So we worry about that number a little bit. And MTN, it's at a little bit of a dip, but not one that is concerning.
So the equity has gone down a little bit.
Equity's gone down,
which suggests that they funded the infrastructure
through a bank or somebody. They owe somebody. When you look at their long-term debt, it's increased a little bit to fund these assets, but not in an alarming way. And another number maybe, and I just jump to that, is we look at the debt ratio. So even though they've increased the actual debt and to get these assets, they were sitting at about a 71% debt ratio the previous year, and now they're at 69.2%. So ever so slightly, they've actually improved. They've got less debt, even though the equity is a little bit less. It's a good movement and a good indicator to say that you've got some really smart guys running this thing. They're able to leverage it, able to without breaking the bank and without doing anything that's significant.
And is 70% debt? Is it the debt equity ratio, right?
It's a debt equity ratio.
Is 70% high, or is it?
It's considered optimal. So
50%
is considered low.
Okay.
50%, you run into this term called lazy money. And let me speak from an investor point of view. You know, if they are generating the kinds of profits that you can't get from government, right? It would be better if they were borrowing from people who rely on those numbers from government, spinning it in their machine, and making a bit more profit. So let's say a government bond gives you 7%, and they're running at a profit margin of 15%. That means that they're able to produce double the value for every rand. So a astute crowd will borrow more money from the people where they will now owe them 7%, and run it through this machine so that they can create 15%. And when you're hitting that 50% mark or less, the argument is you might as well then just have left it in the bank, or you're leaving money on the table. That's generally the term that they use. It's lazy money. You're safer from an investor point of view, but if you wanted safety, you'd be buying government bonds. So you want a team that will take risk, because that's what they pay for: high risk, high reward, and then they give you all of these numbers that we've been going through, and all of this annual report that gives you confidence that this team knows what they're doing, and they're flying. You know, it's a Icarus -1. You're flying close to the sun, but you're not getting burned.
Sure.
Because the closer they get, the better reward you get. And the argument is around between 70% and 80%, and it's better at 70% especially if the team is new. That's kind of good numbers. So you're looking at a 3/4 view of the world. Some companies, you know, they take it to the hilt. They take it to 100%. Again, we're speaking to an audience that we believe are trying to be investors. Stay away from companies that are doing that unless you really know what that company is all about. You want more risk. You don't want just full on. You will just go to the casino.
You don't want them gambling.
You don't want them gambling.
But you want them to use money smartly.
Use money smartly, and so the school of thought, and it's one we all subscribe to. We could probably argue why that number, and we'll probably have a few CEOs and CFOs in the future who we can ask that question to. I'm certainly not as smart as they are, but I do know that is their school of thought. Get it into the between 60 and 70% range. Don't let it run away from you. So if you're sitting in the 70s, you know, in less than 3 years, bring it back into the 60s. And if it's starting to slide into the 50s, in less than 3 years, bring it back up.
Sure.
Acquire some good assets. So so I think MTN is doing really, really well there. And then we're talking about this equity that you're creating. So it's just a little bit less than normal, but the return on the equity, and that's a bit of a hard one to explain. But when we look at the profit based on that delta, the equity, you know, we can also measure that and say, now that you've increased your value of your equity, are you increasing how much return you get back from it? And the reason we measure that number is it's a quick, unscientific way to say, okay, it's time to borrow more. You know, so if that number is now
use the cash wisely.
Use the cash wisely. So that's what pushes you back in the 70%. Is if that number, if you're not as profitable, your equity is growing unbelievably. A company you can think of that has to worry about this in a very, very different way to the rest of the world is somebody like Apple. When you're into the $1 trillion, now what kind of equity are we talking about? It's great. Anyone who's in there, but we don't want lazy money, and we don't, you know, and so then that's where you look at that profitability and say, but what are you doing? Are you making me more money based on
what's this equity
as it grows? Because as time goes, it'll grow even more because you'll settle a bit of your debt. So it's also a good number to look at. And MTN turned themselves around phenomenally here. They were at about 12% last year, and they're looking at about 18% on that return. So
on the return on equity.
on the return on equity. So it's a very good, a very, very good number.
It's going in the right direction.
Going in the right direction. Two other numbers that I think are very, very big for the management team, that the management team usually gets rewarded on, and I see those have turned around quite significantly, is where you hear that return on equity that we've talked about, but the other one is then the return on net assets, which is what they call the RONA. So if you're sitting with that management team, they'll talk about the RONA. What's the RONA doing?
Yes.
And they were again there on 12%, and they pushed it to just below 20%. So they had 19 points.
So previously we spoke about return on assets. Now you're talking about return on net assets. Do you want to
return
talk
on
about
equity before?
Yeah.
Now return on net assets.
Okay, return on net assets. Okay.
And that return on net assets looks at the fixed assets.
Okay.
You basically you read the balance sheet and you strip away all of the people and the patents and all of that stuff,
Okay.
and you go.
So
Plant.
now it's the physical things.
Physical
So
things.
net assets is all the physical things you got.
If we got another bunch of humans who had to come and run MTN and they knew nothing, they find base stations,
Yeah, physical things.
physical things,
And
they find
make money with it.
data center, that find network, and that would be the net asset. And,
Okay.
and then we'd measure them on how well can they use that net asset
Okay.
and turn kind of things around. And in that space, they had a 20% again. So that's a phenomenal number. It means you've got a management team that understands how they measure, how they see value, and they're improving that number. And I think it has a great ripple effect on all the other terms that we run across in that financial space. So I think a very good team there. Easy ones for an investor to absorb. I think you've got, when we talk about profit, you can split profit into three numbers. The first number is just really sales minus cost of goods, which is your gross margin. So I bought it for 60 cents, I sold it for 100. Right? And that first number there, MTN didn't stand well. They've climbed up to 24.8% from 20%. So very nice jump there. The second one is the operating. So I'm the guy who went and found it for 60 cents and I sold it for 1 rand and I cost 10 cents. So I eat into the margin, and that new margin is then called operating margin. And on the operating margin side as well, they've also shot up by about 5% into the 16%.
Okay, cool.
16% space. And then the last profit is then you've got to go pay tax. Because you made this money, you're a company, 28% tax. You remove that, we get to the net margin. And on the net margin side, also you see that climb to just under 4%, which is to 10.9%. So all the indicators when it comes to profitability,
going in the right
at the
direction.
top, in the middle, and at the bottom, all going in the right direction. So I think when I look at that as an opening, excellent company to invest in.
Especially if you consider the recession that South Africa's been in.
These are numbers that are in the recession, absolutely. And when we're talking about sales as well in that recession, you're talking about 151. What is this number? 3 billion or million? I must remember what I did there.
Yeah, there's a couple of extra zeros.
I think it's a billion, right? So 100. No, MTN is not in the billion.
179 billion.
179 billion, right?
Services, yeah.
Yes. That's right. So they went from 151 billion, and we got hit by Corona, and they lived 3/4 of their year in the pandemic, and they ended at 171 billion. So they grew that number rather than it shrinking. So the pandemic has been excellent
For them.
And
Work from home, right?
Work from home, but more importantly, we see this, and we go back to why I think I like those ratios we spoke about. It shows you the frenzy of growing the asset base, ensuring that as we grow the asset base, it's still profitable, we're still generating the type of sales that we want from it, and making the right decisions in terms of how to borrow money, and making sure that it's geared properly. So to your point,
When you say geared, you're referring to the debt.
that debt
equity
ratio. Absolutely. And so I think you're working with a phenomenal team. The only thing I would worry about, but not worry enough to not invest in them, and worry enough to invest in them, and then look at, is on their liquidity side. So the best way to explain liquidity is you ignore now the asset we're talking about in terms of the building, the plant. We look at the other one. It's called the current asset, which is the assets for this year. And that's usually accounts receivable, stuff like that. And then we look at an accounts receivable are the people that have supplied you a service. The people that you've sold your stuff to that have to pay you. And then you look at your current liabilities, the people that have supplied you a service and you have to pay them back for. And the theory there is you look at just in that year the movement in terms of their assets versus their liabilities. And liquidity is there. It says then I am selling enough, right? Then I am borrowing within that year. And it's kind of a liquidity number. So if it was an exact number, I'm selling and being owed the exact amount that I'm borrowing and getting back, that number would be 1. And anything above 1 is good liquidity. So
liquidity being available cash.
Available cash. So without going into cash flow.
Not my savings.
Not your savings.
But
how is it going to affect
from
my
trading?
Cash? From trading. And what you want is you want to end the year knowing that the cash that's coming into the business is worthwhile. Cash is king. So that's been called the liquidity. And there's 2 liquidity tests that are done. So the one is then called the current liquidity test, which is exactly kind of what I've spoken about. And that number was dipping. It just dipped below 1. It went to 0.9. They've brought that number back to 1. But I would like to see that number get as far away from 1 as possible. Then you know, these are also generating cash.
Sure.
And I've got kind of
they've got spare cash.
They've got spare
the
cash.
more number over 1, the more spare they have.
Absolutely.
1 means I've got the money coming in, but it's going out to the suppliers.
Absolutely.
Almost at an equal level.
Absolutely. And you could argue and say, but why am I being so difficult? It doesn't sound too bad, 1. Then there's the purists who then do an asset test, and they say, well, remove the inventory, because you're going to count the inventory as an asset, but it's actually sitting in your warehouse and it's useless. So
because if it's been sold, it's a revenue.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely. And when you look at liquidity in general, it counts that as if it was going to be sold. So that's what gets your number to 1. And when you remove that in the MTN case, that number drops back to 0.7.
Okay.
And it's been 0.7 for
Okay.
the past 2 years. So,
Okay.
So too many handsets sitting somewhere in a warehouse.
Too many handsets sitting somewhere in a warehouse.
And you want to just see that disappear. The world that we're living in as well. There's so much movement when it comes to options and choices. We've seen foldables come about now. We've seen Samsung with the Flip and the Fold 3s coming into the market. We see MTN itself bringing in Oppo, which is a Chinese manufacturer, and we see the Huawei's trying to come in with new product. We see, of course, refreshes when it comes to Apple. So when you think about that inventory sitting around, slowly, even though, in this case with MTN, they've got 34 billion rands worth of assets.
Okay.
Inventory sitting around, from 17 billion inventory, it's doubled.
Yeah.
It's doubled that inventory.
So you're saying the rapid move of technology, you don't want to see such a big inventory. You don't want to see the risk of them getting stuck and unable to sell, move that inventory.
Yes.
Makes the liquidity position look a little bit more dire than.
And I say that sitting on the sidelines, right? Because again, we know there's been a chip shortage. We know there's been ships that got stuck in that Suez Canal.
Sure.
the evergreen,
Yes.
and messing up the supply chain. So it's good to stockpile as well in terms of inventory. So maybe these are the reasons your asset liquidity is sitting at 0.7, because you've had to up on your inventory. But I get nervous when there's, it's not how much you have. I just want it to be beyond 1. When I do the asset over liability, I must come out at a positive number, and then have the liability be bigger than the asset.
Is that just like a safety mechanism that you want them to have more cash? Is it just does it make it easier for them to manage shocks to the system, surprises, because they have extra cash available? Well,
it's a scientific number, but I think the art. Let's look at what that number says again. It says I have more people buying this thing than I have suppliers giving me stuff. That's a great position to be in, and that's what makes you a positive number.
So the
demand is bigger than the supply. That's what your liquidity is.
But at the moment, it's looking like it's equal.
Well, if you remove, because they bought a lot of inventory, and the inventory has been counted as, but we bought it for customers, and surely they'll come, and that's why they're sitting at 1.
Okay.
Right. And so if you think about the COVID side of things, I'm now buying a lot of inventory to avoid a situation, not because there's customers, but to avoid a situation, so that when the customers come, I don't lose out on that opportunity. And then that's why I worry about tech. And then the tech turns around very quickly, and then you've got these M1 chips being introduced, and the whatever chip and that chip, and the price of handsets falls to a point where the people you had earmarked to buy this stuff are now upgrading and buying better products from you still. What happens to the old product? You have to discount it, and that's my.
I think that affects your margin.
It affects your
operation
margin. That means you're selling far less, so it's a number. It's not a number that you worry about, but it's a number that we all like to keep an eye on.
So it's a delicate balance for the teams to manage.
Absolutely, and I think that's a good choice of words that you use there. None of these things are wrong. You could even listen to another podcast and they say, "Do you know what MTN does great? They have a 1 liquidity, but they use this buffer on inventory." So it's just a choice that you make. Yeah. And I think on the financial side, those are probably the main ones that I like to. Well, in terms of this podcast, that I would want to talk about. The rest are kind of much of a muchness. I suppose the one I would not want to run away from ending off is the market. In the stock market, because we're talking to investors, potential investors, and we look at the dividends per share. So how much do they pay out for every share that you hold? They were at 6.3. So if you put in 100 Rand worth of shares every year, you would get 6 Rand back as your dividend, maybe 3 Rand halfway the year, 3 Rand a bit later on. That number's kind of stayed the same. They're at 5.9 now. So it's much of a muchness. 5 Rand 90 versus 6 Rand 30. You're getting a good return. So I like to translate that number as my true comparison with the bank. So if I take money and I put 100 Rand in the bank,
how much am I getting?
All things equal today, the bank, a very good bank, will probably pay me 4%. Maybe even push it to 5%.
Discovery saying 8%.
No, but that's lots of Rand. So we're talking about 1. So we look at it at the lowest.
Sure.
At the investors, I believe we're talking to.
Sure.
We're not talking. Those other guys about Alan Gray. You put in millions, you will get that kind of return. But we're dabbling. You're putting in maybe you're putting in 2,000 Rand, maybe 5,000 Rand. You're trying to grow your investment portfolio. I like this dividend.
The cash out that you're going to get.
Yeah. How much do I get per year? And how much have they been paying out per year? Because then I don't feel shortchanged, because it's real. That's the real value. That's the real way I measure wealth creation in the very short term. So that's a very good number, I think. They do have other things that they talk about, which is their headline earnings per share. So how much share earned, not how much went into your pocket. And those numbers are good. I think those numbers are just market numbers to me. They're good to look at. They're good indicators to say I should invest or not invest, but I wouldn't get terribly married to them, other than to say that they've doubled those. They want 5.70 Rand, 12.40. That's super. Just know, you're getting behind a very solid team there. But the number, I think I would, if you're going to look at the market, just go look at dividends. Look at the dividends per share, and whatever that number is more than you'd be getting from the bank.
Sure.
Or less than you'd be getting from the bank, yeah. Cool. And I think for me that's a good financial summary of where I think.
So for you, based on that financial summary, MTN is a yes.
So it's a very big yes. And I think I want to more kind of say what's the point of us talking for this long period for somebody who's looking at investing. And I think what I'd love for the podcast to have given you as a takeaway is more than just a yes. I feel a bit more intimate with MTN. So I think the yes was there. It's a no-brainer. Like we haven't done a few companies. We buy Woolworths. If you're an investor, buy. It's the stuff your kids consume. It's the stuff that you consume. You can buy them, but you could have said that for Edgar's. And they're trying to turn their story around. But just jump back to that Edcon at that time then. Who started telling you and started talking to you and started saying, even if you're invested in this company, I'm uncomfortable with these numbers, because if you go back, you'll see the trend all the way through. And I think that's what I'd love for us to be able to do is, a year from now when we review MTN, again, we're coming into the intimate and we're saying, it was a yes last year. It probably is going to be a yes this year, but is it time to pull your cash out now? Are they what is this management team doing? It will probably not be the case because the team has already changed, and we expect this team to kind of be there all the way through. But there's companies where we're expecting team change. Telecom has just gone through a team change, so we'd love to see what are those numbers going to look like a year from now. Now that they've introduced their new guy, Vodacom hasn't had a change for a while. Shamil has been sitting there, and that's good. But eventually, at some point, he's going to make the change. And what I'd love for our podcast to be able to do is look at these things intimately, try and demystify them, speak about them, and say, how comfortable am I? And I said yes.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So the question I then have for you is, what else comes up? So we've looked at the financials, we looked at all of that stuff. What comes up for you? What comes up for me as insights now that if you were to marry all of this together and you tie it up together and go, what's the big insight you got out of diving into MTN? What did you notice? What made you go, oh, when it comes to their strategy, their financial performance, their vision, whatever it may be?
I think for me there were kind of two main things. The one was as a core business, their core business is strong. Their core business is growing. Their core business, they're doing well.
Yeah.
I can see them trying to diversify into other areas. I didn't get the impression that they were doing well in those strategies just yet. But their core business is rock solid and doing well. That was the one thing that came out for me. And the second thing that came out, and I mentioned it a couple of times, and I'm happy to mention it again, is this a hedge against the South African economy. That in a time when the South African economy is struggling and doing really poorly, here's a great asset that is continuing to show growth.
Right.
And you can even compare the territories, and you can see the South African territory showed 1.6% growth in the period, whereas all the other territories had double digits, and the organization as a whole double digits.
Right.
And so a great place to be in a recessionary economy that South Africa is at the moment.
Right.
So it's one of the few places we've still seen growth. Few businesses that are still doing good growth in this tough economy that we're in.
Yeah. A bit of a challenge for Godfrey, but Godfrey being the CEO of MTN South Africa. I think what comes up for me, I know they've been talking about fintech, and I know they've been talking about payments, and we spoke about that mobile commerce. They're seeing, I think that was a big insight for me, seeing that their ambition is to marry, a channel like Ayoba with financial service products, not just banking. They're talking about lending. They're talking about insurance, and I like that, because that's a big, heavy, audacious goal. And I wish that team all of the success in trying to make that dream come true. But I think it's a goal worth pursuing in a country where we have the number that is classified as unbanked, the number that is classified as not having access to the internet, and for a company that says they believe that everybody deserves the right to a modern life, or these assets that provide a modern life. I think it's good to see that. So I hadn't seen that from the outside. You just read the headlines that are out there, but it's comforting to see that Ralph's got a plan, and I think from the little that I've read there, that a lot of his team are behind him, and have translated that. And there is a part of his team that needs to get out of that internal world and start understanding what the customer wants, and start talking about their internal terms. But they're not. Luckily, they don't threaten the whole ship. So to buy or not to buy?
To buy.
Absolutely.
Definitely a buy.
Again, this does not constitute financial advice. I think a couple of people said never invest money that you're not willing to lose, or if you lost it, rather, shouldn't change your way of life. So don't be, if you're investing, that is the one piece of financial advice I would give you, is don't invest money that's planned for something in your life in here, but rather go see a financial advisor. Ms. Lale, thank you for that. Thank you
very much.
Our inaugural. We'll probably stop changing clothes so much.
Yeah, maybe we'll have more stamina next time.
Absolutely. And we invite you to however you latch onto us. If you're on YouTube, subscribing. If you're on a podcast, just putting us in your playlist, and we will improve. But more importantly, we aim to keep it highly educational and as insightful as possible for you. Cool. Till the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.